It is written by the Skotsimi sage Lamisen that in the beginning there was but a single perfect pearl, in which Anu, the one God, resided. Anu was the sum of all things good and evil, light and dark, physical and mystical, joy and sadness, all reflected across the crystalline facets of its form. And, within its eternal dream state, Anu considered itself all of its myriad facets. Seeking a state of total purity and perfection, Anu cast all evil from itself. All dissonance was gone for a time. These discordant parts formed into the being Tathamet, the first primeval. Though separate beings, Anu and Tathamet were bound within the pearl. There they warred against each other in an unending clash of light and shadow for ages uncounted, neither gaining the upper hand. At last, their energy spent after countless millennia of battle, they delivered their final blows. The energies unleashed by their impossible fury ignited an explosion of light and matter so vast and terrible that it birthed the very universe itself. Hello, and welcome to the party. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Diablo lore and the potential plot, or my speculations of what the plot might be for the Diablo 4 lore. Now, the current lore that we know of in the Diablo universe, what I'm going to be covering are events that took place before the first Diablo game, okay? So before Diablo 1. This is really important as it relates to the overall plot in Diablo 4, because it heavily deals with Inarius and Lilith, and I think most people already know that. However, the reason why I'm doing this is, one, not only does it provide the necessary context for my speculation, but two, going through things like Reddit and Blizzard forums, I noticed that there's a lot of confusion as it relates to, Lilith and Inarius. So, for example, a lot of people are like, how is Inarius even in how is he even in Sanctuary? And people are like, oh, wait, I thought Lilith was free. Why is she, being freed again? What's going on? So I'm going to try to clear all of that up, and then provide the necessary context for my points. First, we have the Great Conflict. What is the Great Conflict? It's a never-ending war between the High Heavens and the Burning Hells, and they want to obtain the power of the World Stone. The World Stone is basically a massive object the size of a mountain, and it has the ability of creation. So, naturally, everybody wants it. Battle goes on and on and on, and Inarius kind of gets sick of all of this, and he says, I don't want to do this anymore. And so, he tries to go find like-minded individuals, but while he's doing this, he gets captured. In his imprisonment, he basically continuously spouts nonsense about ending the eternal conflict. This touches Lilith's heart, and she frees him, and the two immediately fall in love with each other. I do want to note, however, that it's not specifically stated once that Lilith is in love with Inarius. She is a succubus, and she is just manipulative by nature, so she's usually doing things to get what she wants. Just keep that in mind as it relates to Diablo 4, okay? So anyways, Inarius and Lilith, they go to demons and angels alike. They find out that there are a lot of angels and demons that feel very similarly. They don't want to fight anymore. They steal the World Stone. They cast a funky-dunky spell, and it slips all of them into a pocket dimension. And what they do is they create the World of Sanctuary around the World Stone in this pocket dimension, right? Inarius and Lilith immediately start bumping uglies. Boom, you've got Rathma, the first of the Nephilim. Other angels and demons in Sanctuary also follow suit, and boom, now you've got Nephilim everywhere. Lilith loves this, Inarius hates it. Again, Inarius, he wants to be the most powerful. He wants to be in charge. He's extremely self-centered. That's who Inarius is. Lilith sees it as an opportunity. She sees the potential within the Nephilim, and what she does is she says, no, I want to create a Nephilim army and go fuck up heaven and hell for everything that they did. So what Lilith does is she kills every single angel and demon in all of Sanctuary except for Inarius and herself. Inarius is like, WTF, bro, and then banishes her to the void for her action. Inarius, then being the sole ruler of Sanctuary, takes the power of the World Stone onto himself, very selfish, but then in a triple dick move, he also uses the power of the World Stone to sap the power away from the Nephilim. So after a few generations, Nephilim eventually degrade to the species called humanity, and that's it. Humanity has no more power. They're extraordinarily weak, and Inarius is easily the most powerful being in all of Sanctuary, and probably even the most powerful being in all of the Diablo universe at this point. Now, around this time, the Burning Hells, they figure out the existence of Sanctuary, but they don't want to notify the high heavens, and so what they do is they get all sneaky and they build up a religion called the Triune in Sanctuary. The teachings of the Triune are essentially meant to corrupt humanity over to the side of the Burning Hells. Now, Inarius obviously knows exactly what's going on, so he creates his own religion called the Cathedral of Light. Boom, you've got the Sin War. You got the start of the Sin War right there. While this is going on, though, Lilith somehow breaks out of her imprisonment from the Void. We don't know how, so we just have to deal with it. She sees that Nephilim are no longer around, and Nephilim are now these squishy things called humanity. So what she does is she travels to the World Stone. She casts a cool spell that allows humanity to access their dormant or their latent Nephilim powers from their ancestors. So we get a really cool buff. Thanks, Mom. Now, when this happens, humanity starts to awaken into what is known as an Edirum. Edirum start to awake everywhere, and one of the Edirum is Oldician. Now, Oldician is manipulated by Lilith, and essentially she tells him to go across all of Sanctuary and start to wipe out the Triune and the Cathedral of Light. And he does this. He wrecks face. I mean, we're talking like a full-blown steamroll. The Edirum are continuously getting more powerful, and Oldician is also getting more powerful. And with this power, obviously, comes intelligence and awareness and all that other fun stuff. Eventually, Oldician becomes a little bit more aware and realizes that he's being manipulated by Lilith, and Lilith gets her ass beat. Inarius takes advantage of this, comes in, and banishes Lilith to the Void again. So she was imprisoned into the Void once before the Sin War, and again, somewhere in the middle. Inarius becomes very paranoid, and he sends an assassin after Oldician. Obviously, it fails. Inarius becomes even more paranoid, and he strikes a deal with Diablo. And this deal essentially allows Inarius to send someone by the name of Malik to try to possess Oldician, because Malik has the ability to control bodies, like people. This also fails, and so Inarius essentially loses his mind. And by the way, this whole time, Inarius quickly spiraling downwards. Like, his mental stability is... it's non-existence. He is insane, like certifiably insane. And so Inarius, after Malik fails, decides to kind of take things into his own hands and says, you know what, I'm going to go fuck up Oldician myself. Inarius and Oldician get into this crazy, crazy fight. They're both gods at this point, so the battle is absolutely insane. It's literally reshaping the world around them, like mountains, volcanoes, earthquakes. It's crazy. It's easily the most insane fight that we've ever had in Sanctuary. Like, nothing has even come close at this point. Around this time, the high heavens rip a hole in the sky. They come pouring down. Oldician essentially sees all of the chaos that's going on. He says, nope, I don't want to do this, and he starts to control the everything. He sends the demons back to their homeland. He sends the angels back to their homeland, and essentially the only people left are the Edirum Nephilim humans, right? So he starts to reverse everything, but this is too much for him to handle, and he essentially starts to explode. So then he gets banished to the Void so he can self-destruct in peace. After this all happens, there's a meeting of parliaments of sorts, and the meeting is the archangels Rathma and Mephisto. Yes, Mephisto. Everybody essentially agrees that they're just going to leave Sanctuary the hell alone. Mephisto only agrees to this, however, in the event that he is allowed to take Inarius as his captive and torture him for all of eternity. Keep that in mind. Mephisto asks for Inarius specifically. As far as, you know, the lore goes, Lilith is still in the Void, and Inarius is being tortured by Mephisto for all of eternity. Time is reversed, and the memory of all of this happening is wiped from pretty much everybody, except for Mephisto, the Archangels, and a few others. That essentially creates the building blocks for the Diablo universe that we have today, right? Now I want to start getting into speculation, okay? Now, before I get into this, I want to talk about the strings, or connecting the strings towards my overall theory. The next things that I want to cover is Lilith being freed, Malik, the Bloodied Wolf, Mephisto, Hadriel, Inarius, and that's it. So start off with Lilith being freed. This is just kind of, again, a recap. A lot of people seem to be confused that Lilith is being freed again in Diablo 4. This actually makes sense, right? She was imprisoned into the Void twice by Inarius, once before the Sin War and once again somewhere in the middle, and that was the last time that we heard of her. So she, as far as we know, has been in the Void the entire time, so her being freed from the Void at the beginning of Diablo 4 actually makes a lot of sense. Let's go and talk about Malik. How do I know this bald guy in the cinematic is Malik? Well, the way that Malik is described in the books is as follows. One, he's very cunning, very intelligent, like Mephisto. And this makes sense because he's also described as being a servant of hatred. He might be a servant to Lilith, right? People have said, oh, Lilith is the daughter of hatred. And so, you know, people are saying, yeah, that makes sense. But I think it's a bit deeper than that. He can control lesser demons, which we do see in the cinematic. He can control other living beings, which we also see from that bald individual in the cinematic. And he can steal a person's flesh, which we also see in that cinematic. If you had to ask me, and if I were to put my bets on anybody, I would say that this bald guy in the cinematic is actually Malik from the Sin War. Now the Bloodied Wolf, and who I think it might be. I really think that all signs point to this wolf being Zoltan Kulle. It's the same voice actor. He was part of the Herodrum. If it is Zoltan Kulle, he would obviously have intimate knowledge of soul stones and how to create them, as well as how to trap entities within them. For the purposes of my overall, I guess you could say, theorycraft or speculation, it makes the most sense for this wolf, the Bloodied Wolf, to be Zoltan Kulle. Okay, so let's go on to Mephisto. What I want to talk about with Mephisto right now is the name Mephisto and where it comes from. So here's a quote. Mephisto is a variation of the name Mephistopheles, derived from the Hebrew words Mephis, which means distributor, and Tophel, which means falsehood, i.e. Mephisto means distributor of falsehoods. Mephisto being essentially a liar, or being manipulative and kind of twisting things to his own benefit, is like, it's in the name. It's in, like, it's the literal definition of his name. So let's go ahead and talk about Inarius and Hadriel. With Hadriel, there's not much to talk about here, and a lot of people may not even know who he is. Before we go any further, I want to play a very, very brief clip from a video by Dark Lord Dash for you. Here you go.
Why was he ignored by demons in their own domain? Well, despite Hadriel's solid appearance, the supplemental Diablo 2 book, To Hell and Back, somewhat solves the mystery of the overlooked hell-housed Hadriel, claiming the angel was not physically present in hell, but rather that his appearance was a projection.
So we know illusion magic and projection magic are very real within the Diablo universe, right? We'll come back to this. Stay with me. Let's go ahead and talk about Inarius. This is where things start to really come together, okay? So starting this off, I want to read a quote directly from Sin War. Mephisto bound Inarius with tremendous chains and slowly tore the wings from the back of the angel. Great barbed hooks were then used to stretch out the once glowing skin, and his features were distorted by the vile powers. Many of the followers of Inarius were given as gifts to Baal and Diablo, but the rest were molded to match the bloated image of the now crippled angel. To this day, Inarius is said to be trapped in hell within the Chamber of Mirrors, his eyelids torn from his face as he is forced to gaze upon his misshapen form for all eternity. Bloated form, crippled, to this day, he is there for all of eternity. We have not seen or heard of Inarius escaping his imprisonment. The Inarius that we see in the game does not look like he has had his wings torn off. He does not seem to be bloated, misshapen, or anything like that. And although we can't see his face, we definitely don't see his eyelids being removed. Not only that, but in Diablo 4, he wants to go back to heaven. Even though in the Sin War, after he creates Sanctuary, he accepts the fate of the fact he will never be able to return to heaven. He accepts this fate and doesn't try to go back once. So why the sudden change in motivation? Why return to a place that subjected you to such extreme torture? And you could say for purposes of revenge, but I don't think that's the case. So let's go ahead and put this all together, and here's my theory. The name Mephisto essentially means distributor of falsehood, so this would fit very well as it relates to fooling the player. We know that the memory of pretty much everyone was wiped after the Sin War, except for a few individuals, Mephisto being one of them. Could it be possible that he has intimate knowledge of how to free Lilith from the Void since he was around at the time when she first escaped? Could it be possible he tasked Malik with freeing Lilith? Now, if we check the wiki of Mephisto, we also know that the undead that we fight in the Diablo universe are the direct minions of Mephisto. Moving on to the Bloodied Wolf, looking at him, I would argue that he is very clearly undead. The runes that we see on the skull or the head of the Bloodied Wolf are runes of Mephisto. Now, I know a lot of people are taking the stance that the Bloodied Wolf is Mephisto. I am going to say that the Bloodied Wolf is being controlled by Mephisto, and the Bloodied Wolf is Zoltan Kulle. But why Zoltan Kulle? Well, Zoltan Kulle was one of the original members of the Haradrim. He has intimate knowledge of soul stones and trapping entities within them. He also created the Black Soul Stone, which was capable of trapping demons and angels alike. So what if Zoltan Kulle, just like with the Black Soul Stone, learned to create an even more refined stone? What if Mephisto wants more than to become the prime evil like Diablo before him? What if Mephisto wants to be the one god, like Anu? Is it really too far-fetched to believe this might be possible if you entrapped both the primevals and archangels into a single soul stone? What if he can't do it alone? What kind of army would he need to take on both heaven and hell, and who would be able to rally an army like that into existence? We already know of one army that was capable of doing this long ago. Not only that, with Diablo 4 being open world, we've never had so many Nephilim running around. Can you all say 40-man raids? Inarius told us he wants to return to heaven, even though in Sin War he accepts his fate in never returning. Furthermore, why would you want to return to a place that subjected you to such intense torture? The shift in motivation doesn't make sense. Not only that, but by the end of Sin War, Inarius was absolutely insane. He completely lost his mind. And then immediately after that, he was physically and psychologically tortured for thousands of years, and then he just pops up out of nowhere and is seemingly fine. I don't buy it. It doesn't work that way. We also see Inarius kill Rothma and leave a key to hell for Lilith. Okay. We also know that projection or illusion magic exists from Hadriel. And then one last thing I want to point out as it relates to this. We've seen primevals trick humans into thinking they were archangels before. Diablo 2. Baal. Right?
I am not the Archangel Tyrael. Baal.
So what am I saying? I believe the Inarius we see in the Diablo 4 beta is actually Mephisto and is pulling the strings, which starts with freeing Lilith so she can enact her motivation for a Nephilim army, controlling Zoltan Kulle for another soul stone trap device to not only trap demons but also angels to become the one god. Being the master manipulator that he is, it wouldn't surprise me if over the course of the game we put more and more trust into the Bloodied Wolf. After all, why not trust someone who saved your life once already? If I had to ask you who you trust more, walking away from the beta, do you trust Inarius or the Bloodied Wolf more? It's a play from both sides. And lastly, it's widely regarded that Mephisto is the most intelligent and cunning of all the primevals. What's lesser known, however, is that many consider Mephisto to be the one true ruler of hell. It has also been stated that both Diablo and Baal follow along with Mephisto's plans quite frequently, even when they don't want to. They may not like it, but even the Lord of Terror and the Lord of Destruction follow Mephisto's orders. Given Mephisto's intelligence, cunning, power, and leadership, I would argue it's not entirely impossible that Mephisto has been planning this from the very start of everything. Why else would he want the archangels to give him Inarius? If we want to take it even further, what if this power is enough to create another world stone, or something even worse? What if, in his absolute hatred, his goal is not to create, but to end all creation? Now going on from there, there are still some questions that I'd like to have answered. Why is Zoltan Kulle a wolf, and how did he get that way? We don't know. What is the importance of Lorath Nar, not only having a prominent role in the game, but also being the narrator? If we're taking reference material from Diablo 2, and we've already seen heavy influences in Diablo 4 that have made its way into the game from Diablo 2, and this is a Diablo game, I'm going to ask you, have you ever played a Diablo game where Diablo wasn't the main baddie? Diablo Immortal doesn't count, we don't talk about that game. I think it would be interesting if there was one last surprise for us all at the end of the Diablo 4 game.
You think me mad, old friend, but I know these dreams. They tell of the future. Hell is coming, brother. Hell is coming.
Now you know what I seek, Marius. This is my brother. Sleep now. We set out with the dawn.
Thanks for sticking around. I know this is a little bit of a longer video. However, if you enjoyed my content, feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. What are your theories behind the Diablo 4 lore, or just the Diablo lore in general? Is there anything I missed that you think is important as it relates to my overall speculation? Anyways, outside of that, again, thank you so much for stopping by, and I will talk to you later. See ya.